Recording in progress. Hello, my name is Lucifer Widow. Welcome back to Just a Video podcast, where we talk about whatever we want. Creepy, weird experiences, anything from true crime to pop culture, current events, personal experiences.
Welcome back to our Just a Video podcast, where, you said it, we go over everything.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And obviously you can tell that we have a special guest here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Wendy. I have a body positivity blog called 𝚅𝚒𝚍𝚎 and I also am a plus size model. So yeah.
Yay. So I actually met Wendy at the fashion show that Kendra and I attended. It was my cousin's fashion show. And you model for my cousin frequently, correct?
Yes.
I actually have you on my billboard here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, I have the same one.
So that's my cousin right there. She's a fashion designer. And then these are the models, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So I guess, and then when I met you, like at the fashion show, you just have such a burst of like positivity and just like light in life. And I actually, I remember I was live streaming the show and you are just such a professional. Like when you're in the zone, girl, you are in the zone. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing like making you lose your focus. And I think that that's what I really admire, what really drew me to you, because you're such a hard worker and then you're such a positive influence on so many people and the people around you. And so Kendra, like when you were meeting her, because did you know about her before or did you meet her just at the fashion show?
I met her just at the fashion show. We met briefly, but you were definitely a standout. And like you have as Lucifer was saying, like you just have like this burst of positive energy, and I vibe with that. I vibe with you.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of introduce us to who you were kind of like as a youngin when it comes to modeling and how the modeling world kind of influenced you growing up.
So when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. And I think that I wanted to be a teacher because I had like a really bubbly personality. And I was like, okay, well, this is like the obvious stuff. Like I'm a girl. I want to do creative DIY things, and like I'm really outgoing. So I was like, perfect, I'll be a teacher. And when I was growing up, I never saw like models my size. I never really saw like models that were either my size in like height, because I'm 5 feet, or also like models like me walking on the runway like a size 14. But my mom, she's super Cuban, and she was always like, las gorditas también tienen derecho, which basically just translates to like, fat girls also have rights. So like you have the right to wear whatever you want and be however you want to be. So like, of course, like I was like bullied along the way. And like I say bullied because it never got physical. And so like, thank God. But like I definitely kept like that same zest throughout my life of like, I was fat and almost like I didn't even know it. I was like, no, it's fine. Like I can do whatever I want. I can wear whatever I want. So I always tried to keep that mentality. And obviously like I started realizing like my own inner fat phobic ways after I started growing up. And I was like, well, why don't I do this? Or like, how come I don't get out of my shell this way? And it's because like I was kind of trained that like a girl's certain size wouldn't do that. And then when I started the blog, I wanted it to be about just like outfits that I was wearing. And a lot of people would like ask me where I would get stuff. And then I started realizing that like that wasn't enough. And I was like, I don't want to limit myself to just like outfits. Like I really want to talk about like self-love and fat phobia and how all of that has kind of like transpired in my life and stuff. So it kind of like snowballed into more of like a blog and a podcast. And then modeling kind of like fell on my lap because a lot of brands wanted to start working with me. And then that kind of like, I don't know, like that inspired me in a different way. And I'm like, okay, now I'm like a model with a purpose. Like now I have to like put up this like modeling thing. And like my dad's a photographer, so I've always had my picture taken like my whole life. And I was like, I really have to like be a model so that I can push my like self-love message out there more.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so your father was a photographer, which is the first thing that stuck into my head. So growing up, how was that experience?
Oh my God. So he's a photographer and he's actually disabled. Like he only has one leg. And like that's how I met him. Like he's always had one leg for me. And he was a photographer at weddings and at 15s and everything. So then I would go along with him when I was around like 12, 13 years old. And like people would look at us, they would obviously look at him. I mean, he stands out. And like I guess I just got used to that and I stopped having that like embarrassment. So even with like Lisa, your cousin, like whenever we go out and we do photo shoots and stuff, Lisa's like, "Hey, we're gonna be in the middle of the street in Wynwood in a busy time, so like get ready." And I'm like, "No problem." So that's definitely helped me. And obviously like going with my dad, I've learned how to like pose a lot more and learn about like
Yeah,
lighting and things like that.
yeah,
That's
no,
so
that's
amazing.
yeah,
Like I
that's
have
awesome. I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Kendra.
No, like I think that's so dope, like how you transitioned like your blog into almost like a lifestyle, basically, your lifestyle and what's valuable to you. But I guess my question is like, it's you started off doing fashion. So what does like fashion mean to you? I mean, that it seems like that gave you people were asking about your fashion and that gave you the encouragement to do the blog, and it's now, trickled into this big, beautiful thing.
I feel like fashion to me, it's like, I think that being fashion forward doesn't have a weight limit or any limits at all. Like, especially now with like non-binary and all these different aspects coming into fashion, I'm like, there are no boundaries. Like I love that. And I feel like a lot of like curvy women, we will be like, okay, you can't show your arms, you can't wear stripes, you can't wear polka dots, like no heavy patterns, because then it's gonna you look more fat, like wear black, wear something slimming all the time. So I feel like now we're all kind of breaking out of that shell and just wearing whatever we feel comfortable. And then like if you want to dress up super baggy or super sexy, it's kind of like it's up to you. And I love that now like curvy women are kind of like we're experimenting with fashion in a way that like I feel like we haven't been able to do in the past.
Like, what have been some of your like, who have been some of your big inspirations? I know your mom, of course, she's definitely motivated you, but has there been anybody else or any other major influences?
So definitely like Ashley Graham. I read her book. I've been following her career since before she became like really, really big. And I remember I followed her before she got on Sports Illustrated. And I was so proud of her, like if she was my best friend. And she has no idea who I am, but it's fine. And so she's definitely like been a huge inspiration because I see that she's gotten to where she is, and it's been a little bit challenging because I feel like a lot of plus size models are always like skinny fat. So it's like they're fat, but they have like a flat stomach, and that's not the case
Hmm.
with me. Or like they're fat, but then they have like a very skinny face and like very thin arms, no tattoos. So like Tess Holiday has been another one that I've been obsessed with her. Like seeing her on the cover of a magazine, I think I cried. Like she is just amazing. So yeah, and now I really like that like TikTok has been a really big thing, and that more curvy girls that are like looking more like me, like looking more normal, I guess, without the flat stomach, they're like getting out of their shell and trying new things. And I'm like, wow, like that's such an inspiration. Like I love that.
Tess Holiday is getting honest with fans. The 35-year-old model took to Twitter to reveal that she's, quote, anorexic and in recovery.
But you mentioned Tess Holiday, and she was actually recently in a slew of controversy because she came out as having a eating disorder. And this is my thing. Like, I want to always kind of like break down the walls of stereotypes and not put people in boxes unless you're not like offending cultures, you know what I mean, and offending communities. Then I will obviously like stand behind you, you know what I mean, and what you want to do as an individual. So coming from someone who obviously like has struggled with all sorts of aspects of, you know what I mean, having society accept you and having them have like bullet points of how you should accept yourself, you know, and things of that nature. What do you say when people are talking down to Tess Holiday and saying, well, how can a bigger person have an eating disorder? How could that be possible? Like, what is your take on that? Because I think it's very important for my channel to always get to the nitty gritty of like people's raw thoughts on very important topics.
Yeah, of course. And when Tess Holiday was like, when she came out saying that she had anorexia and that she was suffering from this, she was recovering from this, my first thought was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of her for like coming out and saying this. Like, this is such a big deal. Like, and I thought about it like any other person would think about it. And I think that like the stigma behind you have to look a certain way. I feel like that kind of comes from an uneducated.
I'm so sorry. You froze for a second and just like rewind, just like 1 second, because I want to be able to get like the full capacity of everything you're saying.
Okay. So I'm gonna start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So when Tess Holiday came out and said that she was like recovering from anorexia, I mean, I was like super proud, and I was like, wow, like what a bad bitch. Like she's coming out here, she's like saying that she's recovering from this eating disorder. And I think that all the people that are kind of like upset by it and that they feel like maybe she is not really anorexic, I think that maybe they have the wrong definition of what anorexia really is. Like there is no weight class that you have to be placed in. And I feel like there are a lot of curvy, plus size, fat people that have eating disorders. Like I have definitely had my bouts with like binge eating and stuff. And like my relationship with food has always been a little bit complicated growing up and even now. So I wasn't surprised that she's had an issue with food. Like that's unfortunately something that's very common in like women. But I think that the reason everybody was attacking her is because they all have this preconceived notion as to like what anorexia looks like and like what the poster child of anorexia looks like. And you know, that's just like not true. Like
I agree.
Like, I'm proud of her for coming out.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I'm 100% proud of her for standing up for herself. She did undergo a lot of scrutiny, and if I get into like the nitty gritty of like why, it's because she did like lie about like, not lie, but like kind of like fabricate like being diagnosed with it. And I think she just wanted to hide that because she wanted to find the social acceptance without having to like explain herself forever and in every single interview and go around in circles about it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a situation that she feels, and that's how she wanted to deal with it, was to open up, you know, and people slating her is not, it's not cool. You know what I mean? Like she's not trying to offend a community by like, I don't think she was trying to offend a community by like doing triggering things. I think she was just trying to have her story. And like people were saying that she like jumps from like community to community, you know, and like she always just has like she jumped from like the LGBT community and then like the non-binary community and then like, you know what I mean? And then like all these communities. And my whole thing is like, why are people keeping such track of like where people feel comfortable in on certain levels? Like I don't feel like she was offending communities, you know what I mean? I feel like she was just kind of moving in her own way, and then people were just having an issue with her, you know? Like we've been talking about like this guy named Ollie London, who has changed his whole entire appearance to look like a member from BTS because he's so like obsessed with like Korean culture and their music and like the language. He doesn't speak the language very well, but he travels out there, so he's just so obsessed with their culture. And I believe that he suffers from body dysmorphia. And Kendra and I have been kind of talking about that because I haven't suffered from body dysmorphia, although I have had like an eating disorder before, and when I was younger, and I never like associated that to like hating myself and my body. I just always just kind of like, well, I'm, you know what I mean? Just got to be what it is, you know what I mean? So like my question to you, I guess, is like, what would you say for someone that I guess is not fully comfortable within who they are as a human being, that they have to go to extreme measures like steroids or, you know what I mean, surgeries and things of that nature? What would you have to say to someone like that? And I'm so sorry, we'll get to like the fun questions, but I think it's important for people because people always see us like talk about hard-hitting topics or like, you know what I mean, having overly opinionated, you know what I mean, or like being overly opinionated or like getting into topics that not a lot of people talk about. And I think it's very important for people to like have a conversation with people that they may not on an everyday basis, you know?
No, 100%. I love these topics. Like this is amazing. And as for Ollie London, they were talking about, I don't necessarily think that that's a body dysmorphia thing. I think that's definitely more of like an idolizing obsession. Like he probably has more of a connection to this BTS member than he feels like a connection to himself. So maybe that's like a different side of it, because body dysmorphia is more, at least for me, what it means is more like you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't look like what you look like in your head or what you think you look like in your head. So maybe it's like, maybe it does have a little bit of body dysmorphia in there. And everybody kind of just like moves differently. And as for like tests and stuff that we were talking about it, I think that like moving from community to community is kind of just her trying to figure herself out.
Yeah.
Like she's LGBT or she's non-binary. It's like I feel like every person that's LGBT or non-binary or trans or whatever, like you're going through a journey, and like it's a journey. Like it doesn't just start off that like one day you choose the perfect community and you're part of them and you're done. I think that you kind of have to figure yourself out, and for some people it takes longer than others. And for like plastic surgery, I am not against plastic surgery, but I do see that like more and more people are getting plastic surgery, and like it's more surgeries than ever. So it's not that they just get one, they have to get like 10 to hopefully match the image in their head. And I wonder, like, what if you had like access to therapy and like could talk about those issues before doing such a drastic change? And some things you really can't change, like getting your boobs done. Like if you're so insecure about it and you have tried and tried all the mental, for some reason that's just something that you cannot get over. I to some extent I understand like wanting to get surgery, but it's definitely rough, like getting so many surgeries and then at the end you kind of look at your body and you still don't recognize it, and it's because you've kind of had body dysmorphia the whole time.
Oh my gosh, girl,
Yeah.
stop. Yeah, that's horrible. And the thing is that I empathize with these people so much, because if I was their friend, honey, it would not be like that. Like I'm such a good friend, you know what I mean? Like I'm that person, like I check up on my friends. We have like group therapies, sessions, you know what I mean? We have like dinners, we have like powwows, hiking, like, you know, we have like little freaking whatever type of sessions we're into, you know, book sessions, cooking sessions, just to make sure that our mental health is on game, you know? And if my friend were to go through wanting to go through such drastic measures, I would say, like, for instance, like if my friend, like my sister has talked about, like, you know what I mean, wanting to like, and my sister's health journey has like, you know what I mean, her whole journey has been amazing too. Like her being like pretty much a big girl our whole entire life to like now in the most recent years, like in the last 2 years, her really like striving for her, you know what I mean, her overall health. Not that being thinner is an overall health, but it's like when you choose to be healthy for yourself and how you accept health for yourself, that's what's important. And for my sister's case, it's important like for her to just like, she's like done slimming down, so now she just kind of wants to tone and do all that stuff. But she said that she wants to like get like maybe like surgeries or whatever like in the future, maybe like I don't even know, you know what I mean? But my suggestions to her would be like, make sure you're going through all measures like toning and like even like body. Now they have like things like body sculpting, like eye sculpting and things like that's like, you know what I mean, and like little like injections here and there. You don't have to go to like the extreme measures of like surgery. Sometimes you may have to, you know what I mean? But I would always advise people to like go through all measures and also make sure that it's not because you're wanting to please other people and it's because like it's a personal milestone that you're trying to reach within an ultimate goal, you know, and that there is an ultimate finish line. You have to be able to see a finish line, you know. That's what I would suggest, you know, if I was if I had friends that were my friends. I haven't really had friends that have had like body insecurities that have been open with me, so I haven't really had to like coach them through stuff like that. But But do you coach your friends normally? How would you advise coaching your friends?
I have like a variety of friends, like thin friends, fat friends, mid-size, plus size, everything. And honestly, it's a lot of the same insecurities. I feel like thin women and fat women, we kind of all are super insecure, but nobody wants to communicate it and like nobody wants to talk about it. So I've seen that like when I'm super open about it and I'll be like, man, you know what I hate? When I go to the salon and I don't fit right in the chair and like my thighs are spilling over. And I realize that when I talk about things like that, my other friends are like, damn, you know, like that happens to me too. And I thought that it was just me. So I feel like sometimes when you just like talk about your own insecurities, they kind of like, they're like, damn, like I feel a little bit less alone today. And then I become kind of like their cheerleader when they send me photos. Like, I don't know if you guys do this, but in my chat, everybody's like, okay, approve the photo before I post it on Instagram. So I become like world's best cheerleader out there doing a whole routine. Like, yes, I love it. You look amazing. And it is checking in on them. And just like what you're saying with your sister, with her journey, that maybe she wants to get surgery or not. And I would say like, sometimes it's hard to have like that end goal, because like self-love is kind of like, it's gonna have so many ups and downs. And like you can go a couple months with feeling like, oh man, like I need the surgery, I need the surgery. And then you follow an account, you get inspired, you somehow accept yourself, somebody else starts accepting you and giving you that validation, and all of a sudden you're like, man, you know what, I don't really need it. So sometimes it's about like inner work and like realizing that it's always like a temporary feeling and not something as finite as like surgery. But definitely like, yeah, back to your question, being a cheerleader, I feel like that's like my purpose on this earth, on this universe.
Same.
It's amazing. I agree with everything that you all have said. And like, I don't know, kind of going back into Tess, I don't really know who that is. But as you had mentioned, Wendy, like I think it's like a growing process, you know, like we kind of bounce around as we're figuring ourselves out, you know. If we all look 10 years back, like there's a lot of stuff we might have tried, we might have thought we liked, we might have thought we didn't like, and you know, now it's a 180, you know, it's totally different. So I definitely believe it's like a journey of trying to figuring out who she is, and you know, as we all are trying to figure out who we are essentially. And then also I just think like it's kind of hard because it's one of those things. It's really good to be a cheerleader for your friends, but if that individual or individuals or have body dysmorphia or something in their body that they don't like, I understand and like respect the perspective of, you know, seeking, you know, alternate ways to come up with a resolution to make them happy. But as long as they're doing for their happiness, and it's a hard one because I think there are some people that just will never be happy with the outcomes of, you know, the surgeries or whatever they opt to select to try to enhance themselves or make themselves feel better. But it's really about just like finding the happiness deep within, you know what I'm saying? And like being happy, you know, with who you are and what, you know, energy you're spreading out in the world, which is kind of a hard place to get to because it's a daily, like every minute working process.
And
So
I mean,
like
you could
what,
even, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was like blurting out. I'm like, you could even be like cool with like yourself on the on the outer side and still have all this crazy stuff you need to deal with on the inside. You know what I mean? It's like being human is pretty hard. It's because we make it complicated.
Yeah. I mean, it's just life is hard in general. And just trying to, you know, meet society expectations or family expectations or friend expectations or even your own expectations that we put on ourselves. So, I mean, it can be challenging. Like, what are some things that you find that motivate you to stay in a happy space?
So I've kind of, I know that my name is Positive Bod. I'm not always positive, but I think that like I've come to the acceptance that it's okay to not always be super extra happy and positive all the time. Obviously like that's my normal, like that's my baseline is like super crazy happy positive. So I try to allow myself to be like really vulnerable and stuff, and I feel like it helps me later on with like just like my development and like my journey and stuff. So journaling honestly for me has helped a ton. And I know it sounds like super corny, but it's just one of those things. And for a while there, like I get into my moments where like I don't want to write anything down. So it sounds crazy, but like I literally just sit there and talk myself out of it. Like I'll just talk to myself out loud and I'll be like, okay, what's going on? Let's check in. Like, what is it that I'm feeling? Or like I'll literally record a voice note to myself, like an audio message. And it helps me a lot because I feel like I just get all of the baggage off and I'll be like, I feel ugly today. I feel like this is not it. I feel like whatever I'm doing isn't working. My blog isn't moving as fast as I want to. And like once I just unload everything off myself, then I'm like, all right, the moment is over. Now we can move on. So like I feel like keeping that like everything is temporary mentality has really helped me along the way. Like even when things are really, really good, I'm like, all right, let me ride this wave as long as I can, because I know that something is gonna come up and like mess it up at some point. So that's really helped, just kind of like talking myself through the bad moments.
I love
Love
that. Like
that.
for me, what I hear is just like you silencing your self-saboteur, because we sabotage ourselves the most. So just telling that saboteur like shh, quiet, like
Yes, so true.
Stress. I keep all of my stress and all of the to-dos and all of like craziness all in one physical place so that I can see it and know that I will physically maintain it. You know what I mean? So that way the wave and the pool of my mind and the things that I have to physically do kind of like stay separate, if that makes sense. That's how I kind of balance it. It's like the way that I see it, it's like sometimes you have to like you have to see it, your mind as sitting at like a bus stop, and like your thoughts and like all these anxieties and everything you have to do when, you know what I mean, are like these cars, and you have to just like focus on like one car at a time and focus on the road and focus on the clouds, and you can't just like focus on like the traffic of everything sometimes, you know what I mean? So I like the method of like when you were saying how you want your blog to grow, like you just kind of like take it back and then you start thinking from like a positive point of view. And I like how you were able to admit you're not always positive. Like your brand and your face is body positive, and it's good to acknowledge that, you know what, being a huge part of being positive is admitting that, you know what, I have my days where I'm not positive, but those are the days where I learned, I reassess, and I keep it pushing, and then I can come back 10 times harder every single time, for other people, for myself, for my goals. So I really, really admire that, and I can definitely relate to that on so many levels, for sure. So I actually wanted to kind of like go back to like being younger. So when you were younger and you wanted to pursue modeling, what age point exactly was that again?
So actually I never had like modeling was a thing that was like very far-fetched idea. Like I went to school, I did everything in hopes of becoming a teacher. Like when I started college, I wanted to be an occupational therapist. So like I thought that I was just gonna work with people, like that was gonna be my job forever, until I got like super fired at like this doctor's office that I had been working at for like 3 years. And I was like, wait, there's something other than this. Like I don't have to work with like old people or like doctors. Like I don't have to work in the medical field to like be successful. So I started working at The Ordinary, like a skincare store. And I was like, man, their marketing is like so minimal, very much Apple vibes. Like it's very like black and white, and somehow they like everything is like flying off the shelves. And so then that kind of got me into marketing, and then that got me into social media. And then when I started seeing like Ashley Graham become a model, I was like, okay, you know what? Like maybe I can do this. And when brands would reach out to me, I was like, oh damn, like
I
not
can
only
really do this.
yeah, like this is happening. Like this
And
guy is on top of me.
And what age point was that again?
Oh no, this was like when I was probably like 21, 22,
Okay.
not that long ago.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think once you balanced yourself, I think once society got their mind right with being able to just accept people, and these institutions and the establishments making people of all diversities feel comfortable in their skin, I think that it allowed other people to kind of realize, wow, like it's a structure that is built. It's not how I should feel, and it's not how these people really feel. It's a structure that has been, you know what I mean, sewed and weaved into our society, like racism. Or I guess people, not only people, because you're a role model for not only people that are, you know, struggling with, you know what I mean, body dysmorphia. You are, you know, a role model for people that are struggling with all sorts of things that they feel insecure about. And that's not to put like so much pressure on you, but I mean, it's almost like I have the same responsibility when it comes to like, you know, my past and being so down on myself and having like a huge mental breakdown when I was younger and not being able to figure myself out. And now I kind of like have a very fine road of where I want my life to be. I feel like I could give solid advice to people. So I guess, what advice do you have for people that are not just struggling with, you know what I mean, the whole body dysmorphia aspect?
I think that like the most important thing is to like physically write down where you feel like you are in your self-love journey. And I know that a lot of people don't like to take on that role, like and also like they just don't want it. Like for example, like Lizzo, and like there's so many different people that they use a different medium to express themselves, and they didn't wake up and say, hey, I want to be your body positive like cheerleader person. They're just fat people in a creative space. But
Right.
me, like, I want to be that cheerleader. So I'm more than happy to take that on my shoulders. And like I would say, it's so important to find out where you are in your journey. And like if you're in the beginning, are you in the middle? Like where are you? How do you feel when you wake up every day? Like, can you look in the mirror? Like I know women that like they tell me I avoid mirrors at all times. And like just finding out where you are can help you find out how to get to like your next level, whether that's doing a complete social media cleanse, which like I do every once in a while when I realize that I'm following all these people that I'm comparing myself to constantly. And I'm like, man, like she's not doing anything wrong. She is just like doing her thing. But unfortunately for me, like I need to be surrounded with people that look like me, because if not, I will constantly compare myself. So doing that social media cleanse and understanding when it's that time to do it, I think that it's really important. So like just finding out where you are in your journey. Maybe you're like you feel good enough that you don't need to do that, or maybe you need a little bit more inner validation. Like you need to figure out if like you're overcompensating, which is like another thing that I've struggled with. You get to a certain point where like you feel so good and confident, and like you just want to be bold all the time, you want to dress sexy all the time, and then you're like, damn, like when I don't dress sexy, I don't feel good. Like I feel like being sexy is like my whole personality trait, because then this person won't actually accept me. So I've talked about that a lot, about like acceptance versus like overcompensating. And so yeah, that comes with figuring out where you are in that path, and like actually figuring out where you are in your like mental health.
I think that's beautiful. Like, I think it's amazing that you've taken initiative to do a social media cleanse, because I think it kind of gives you a reboost. Because I think oftentimes with social media, like the algorithm, the algorithm can be a little shady, and we start to
Algorithm
see
does not. The algorithm, honestly, the algorithm does not like me. If the algorithm needs some personal favors, honey, hit me up. I hear, I with you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
so yeah, definitely. And like I think the algorithm, can be a little shady, and it does highlight societal expectations of what, beauty is, what health is, what fitness is, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's really beautiful once you remove yourself from that space and, give your time to self-validate yourself and kind of like reset yourself, because I'm a personal believer. Like I feel like there's no set criteria to like your life, and like when people when we throw the title of role model on people, it holds them to an expectation that's just like honestly that no one can really meet, because at the end of the day, like we're human, and I like that you want to inspire people. I think that's like very different than like being a role model per se. It's just like inspiring those to, you know, do better or, you know, learn from your mistakes, learn from your successes. I mean, that's what like I personally think that like a role model is. We have to afford them to be, you know, human, you know, and help acknowledging your flaws is like an essential part of self-love. So it's great that, you know, you can, you know, acknowledge, you know what, I'm not happy every day. I'm not positive all the time. Like you have to acknowledge those flaws so you know, can find that self-love. And I think that's beautiful.
I love that you mentioned like those, like you don't have to be positive all the time. But I think it's important, like when you're not positive, to remember, like, don't be hateful and don't scrutinize yourself, but to kind of go through the motions in the way that you like. My whole big thing is talk to yourself in your low moments. I tell Matthew this all the time. My friend Matthew, he's one of my best friends. I tell him all of the time, I say, Matthew, I was like, what advice would you give me right now? Like when you're down, you know what I mean? And he gives me this advice and I'm just like, just take it. You know, he's like, I know, Lou, shut up. And I'm just like, so now what I do is when I'm in my lowest moments, I take my own advice, my good advice, because I give good advice, you know, or I think, what would my good friend give me? Or I seek some friend's advice, you know what I mean? But ultimately, sometimes you don't want to like let people in. So I put myself in a perspective, what if my friend was dealing with this? What advice would I give them? And ultimately I kind of like take that advice and I kind of like maneuver around that. And I think that it's important that when you're in your down moments to have a strategy how to like survive in the hole and lift yourself back up to the light, you know?
Yeah, and everybody's going to be different. Like before, I would be the type of person who would isolate myself a lot. And I would tell my friends, listen, I need a week and I'm fine, but like, please, I don't want to hang out. I want to cancel whatever we have going on this week. Like, I just need my time alone. Now it's a little bit different. Like, I'll try to actually do something to get me out of it. So like, I'll clean the house, like I'll go outside, I'll ride my bike, like I'll physically like go out and like do something to get myself out of this funk and like talk to myself and journal and stuff. But I think it's just like finding new ways to get yourself out of that is kind of like what it's all about. And one day you'll find that one thing that really works for you, and then you'll stick to it and you'll have a lot less days that are shitty.
This whole conversation is inspiring me so much.
Yeah, and also I want to kind of go back a little bit when we were talking about like eating disorders, because I think you mentioned something very like amazing, like very intriguing. And I think when we talk about eating disorders and we kind of have this perception of our programming of what we believe an eating disorder is. And as you were mentioning with anorexia, like like there's so many different layers and levels to different types of eating disorders, including anorexia, and it doesn't have a set criteria what it looks like. And I think when you were saying earlier, oftentimes people that, you know, might, you know, someone might be really thin or someone might be a little bit thicker, but like we all have very similar insecurities. And I think when you were mentioning about communication, and I think engaging and being, you know, vulnerable and talking about those different levels of insecurities or eating disorders or, you know, body dysmorphia that we have, so we can start to feel more comfortable in our skins. I think like engaging with others is just like essential to like realize, to know that, you know, you're not alone. You know what I'm saying? Like we're all going through some different, similar shit, but different, you know,
100%.
different ways of handling it.
I think that gatekeeping just makes insecurity so much worse. And like everybody just feels alone because nobody wants to talk about it. And then people just want to talk about it later when like they have all their shit figured out. But I think if we stop gatekeeping all those bad moments and all those insecure thoughts, the world would be like a much better place. Like we'd all feel like, okay, this is a normal thought. This is a normal insecurity. And, you know, I'll move on from it.
Yeah.
I feel bad. Am I being a bully to Ollie London? Like
a little.
I think that like they probably just have like some sort of obsessive like disorder with this person that like they're constantly pushing behind them. My thing is, if you're not hurting anybody, you're good.
But I mean, he's totally offending the Korean community. People are triggered and hurt and upset. You know what I mean? Especially like after everything that they've been going through, the Asian community, the racial war. They're like, why are white people trying to touch every motherfucking thing? You know what I mean? Like, it's none of my business. So maybe I should stay out of it, you know? But we do podcasting and highlights, you know? So I was like, you know, why not talk about it? But, you know, Ollie, you know what I mean? If you're out there, friends, if you need a friend, you got a friend in me, bro. But at the end of the day, like, I don't agree that you should go through all these freaking surgeries to look like someone else. Like, just be fabulous in all of your like glory, you know? But I need to stop being so like gatekeeping, because I'm like talking about how I don't like that, and I'm over here like saying people can't change race. But it's just really irritating. People think that the galls that people have to change. I'm just gonna change race, like that. The galls that people have, like.
Well, I mean, if we go down to the nitty-gritty, race, I mean, this is also the topic.
Okay, no,
wait, made up social construct.
Yeah. Let's not get off topic, but either way, like, I think that I'm just gonna like open my mind up to like Ollie's situation, but I'm also not gonna like turn my back to like the way that the Korean community feels about the topic, you know. And I kind of like want to go with, you know what I mean, who's actually being hurt. But I guess Ollie's really hurt inside too, when you think about it, you know. But he's hurting people. But anyways, what do you think? What do you think when people like have to always put people down to kind of like feel better about themselves, and not to like
hater alert.
Hater alert. What's that?
Anyways, no. So what do you feel? Okay, me coming from like a Latin family, the women that I've grown up with are very like talky negative, you know? And I'm not sure if that's how it is like in the Cuban culture, you know, but how do you go about dealing with like older women, or, you know, people that are super judgy because of like your comfortability with your body and who you are in your journey?
So a lot, that's very, unfortunately, very normal in Cuban culture as well, where like a lot of people will say that it's because they are concerned for my health, which my health is perfectly fine, but it does suck like to feel a little bit rejected from your own community. But I have found that like for every one hater, I'll have like 40 people who will like follow me and tell me like, oh my God, I'm 40 years old, and like you're speaking my language right now. Like I wish I had somebody like you when I was in my 20s or when I was a teenager. And like I think about that and I'm like, you know, all those people that really feel like bringing somebody else down will help them level up. I get the mentality. I've been there, you know, middle school back in the day, totally get it. But I think that like the reason why you do that is because you have so many deep-rooted things and somebody placed that in you. That didn't just grow from nothing. So that's what I think happens a lot, even in the plus size community. You know, there are so many women that are plus sized that have inner fat phobia, that like they feel like they have this internalized feeling of like hating other fat people. And it's crazy to think about, but it's very true. Like my middle school bully was like twice my size. And I think about that all the time. And I'm like, man, how did this ever fly? Like, how did this person hate me when we were like in the same community? Like we were on the same boat. But I think it's like a normal response because you don't know where to put it. And you're kind of just like, okay, I feel like shit about myself. Let me go make somebody else feel like shit about themselves. And like that'll kind of be like my stepping stone and like my ladder. And at the end of the day, it just kind of hurts two people, right? Like it's gonna hurt that person and it's gonna hurt you because you're gonna be like, not only am I insecure, now I'm also like a bad person. So
right.
I think it's kind of like a double negative. Like it sucks. But I try not to think about like people that hate a lot. I feel like it's always 1 in like 10 people. And then I'm just like, why does that one person stand out to me more than like all the other comments? You
Yeah,
know?
that's
Well,
because hateful energy is so like, yeah, it's so
it is
toxic,
very
it's just
toxic.
like hurt people, like you were saying, like, and it's just them having a shitty moment, shitty day, want somebody else to have a shitty day, so they project their insecurities onto you. And I personally feel haters envy the most because it really takes a lot of energy to hate somebody. Like if you really don't like something or you really like disapprove of it, why waste your energy on it? You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy, and oftentimes it comes from self-hate. As you were saying, like battlephobia. We see this in like all kind of communities, like whether it's colorism, whether it's masculine or feminine, or like it's just like it's a self-hate projecting type thing. I think with haters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also mention something from the social media cleanse. I love that, and that's totally like inspired so much in me. And I'm like, thank you. Maybe like we'll talk about it, but I love that whole concept of like like spiritual or magical aspects with mixed infused with like technology and like you know what I mean, like I love that. But taking a social media cleanse break whatever is definitely vital. What I've been doing on social media, which is funny because I always tell people this, like I don't engage on social media. I comment rarely, but honestly on my social media, if you even notice from my posts which I changed my post like how I used to kind of like change my things on like my MySpace back in the day. That's how I kind of treat my social medias, like you know what I mean, creative MySpace stuff. But anyways, oh yeah, I don't engage with people. Like I'll make comments, but I don't engage. So people don't engage with me. Like people don't, because I always have like my comments blocked off. You know what I mean? Like I have posts from like 2012 and then 13 and then 14 and then like all of a sudden like I didn't post, and then in 2016 17 I'm posting like in black and white, and then like you know what I mean, and then 17 18 and then you know what I mean, and then I become a creator in 2020 like sort of thing. So it's like my engagement has never really been there because I don't talk to people on social media. So it's like that's why I want to start podcasting and like engaging people with topics. And even though I want to like surround my channel with like creepy and weird and true crime and like you know what I mean, reality stuff, I want to like engage. So that's why I want to like have conversations so that people can kind of like you know engage in conversations. But yeah, on social media all I do is output. Like I don't take a lot in unless it's like cute boys and I'm just like staring at their page for like 20 minutes. I'm like, how did we get here? And how can we get somewhere else?
Well,
No, but yeah.
But with engaging, I think that what's best is like, okay, so obviously since you're a creator now, you kind of have to focus on like what would your brand engage with.
Right.
So like it's not so much engaging with like friends and like personal stuff, but more strategic than that. So it's still you, it's still genuine, but it's more from a brand aspect. So like what influencers do you want to connect with? What brands do you want to work with? And it's being strategic about always engaging with them, and like they'll see your name pop up over and over because I work in social media and like I've handled can tell you that the people that comment on every single post, I will know their username. I'll know what DMs that I have with them. So it's important to kind of place yourself in like I guess the more business mindset too.
Oh yeah.
Of like you're engaging with a purpose and you're being genuine, like you genuinely were inspired by something, but also like engaging on Instagram is everything. That's how, your posts get on the timeline because people start engaging back and things like that.
Right, exactly. And then I went to a community college heavily for marketing and business management. So I have that back-rooted aspect of me. And then of course being involved with like the professional white collar, you know what I mean, life for the last 6-7 years, I have the business mentality wrapped up within me. So now like being creative and just like what I've been doing is pretty much like playing with like crayons and paint for the last like year, you know what I mean, is how I consider it. Now it's like now I want to like strategize, even though I've actually been making money like video editing and making thumbnails, which is pretty cool. on a website, which I'm not going to disclose because they ain't paying me, honey. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding. But I mean, they're not paying me to like disclose them. They pay me like when I work for them, but it's like if they want me to like talk about them on my channel, like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna have to see a contract, you know what I mean? But anyways, okay, so so you know what? So what is your podcast all about? Talk to me about your brand. That's what I kind of want to know. I want to know how your brand, when you decided to kind of like take the leap to start your brand, and then kind of like where it is now. So, and the little outlets that you have to like promote and create within your brand.
So I started my brand in like 2019, so like about 2 years ago. And I was in Baltimore. I was on a mission trip with my university and stuff. And I was just surrounded by good energy for so long. And it was like 10 days in Baltimore, like just helping the community. But everybody that was there with me on the mission trip, I was thinking about it at the time, like starting a blog, and they were all like, do it. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever, fuck it. Like that's how every good decision starts. And on my podcast now, I talk about like fat phobia. I talk about like sex, dating, because, you know, when you're plus size, everything is kind of different. So I talk about that. It's very much like a not edited, like uncut kind of version of my, you know, what I think. And I haven't had any guests yet on the show because I'm still trying to like work out all the kinks and things like that.
Kendra and I will always be your guests, you know what I
mean? Yeah. But yeah, so I like to talk about that. I like to think that like my brand, the way that it shows up in people's life is kind of like a cheerleader. It's like where you go when you need that extra push to like get out of your comfort zone. Like my favorite messages are when people are like, oh my God, I haven't worn a bikini in like 10 years, and like here's a picture of me in a bikini because I saw like your posts every day for like a month in a bikini. And I love that. Like I feel like that's how I want to show up in life. So I feel like my brand really kind of like it coincides perfectly with like how I am. And yeah, so I have the podcast on like Apple and Spotify, and then I have my blog. I have a website where you can read like actual blog posts that I used to do. I'm slacking a little bit now because there's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot going on for everyone right now, you know.
So much stuff. But yeah, Instagram is like my main source now, and I love it. I think that it's great, and like just having a brand in general, like these days, and putting yourself out there, making your personality a brand is so cool because it's gonna live on like after you. So I don't know. It's kind of cool to have.
Do you have anything that you would want to say to like people that like watch you, people that like are inspired by you, people that have been watching this podcast? Like, is there anything you want to like say to anyone?
So a question that I get a lot is how to become a plus size model. That's a question that I get, like, I promise you, at least like 4 times in a week. And honestly, I'm not signed to like an agency or anything yet, so I can't give you like very, very solid advice because I guess this isn't like a success case just yet. But I think that like just yet. But I think that like the way that like I've become a model and gotten so many opportunities and stuff to like walk for Miami Swim Week is just like posting every time that I can, and like making photo shoots at home. Like I have a little makeshift photo studio at home, so collabing with like photographers that are just starting up and like really trying to work on your poses. Like I'm such a Leo. I sit in front of the mirror forever just practicing like every little tiny like facial movement.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that you're a professional model. I mean, you're going to be a professional model, so you got to know your angles, girl. You know. Yes. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know mine, so I mean, like, I don't blame you, honey. I have like, you know what I mean. I got a couple good angles. You know what I mean. You gotta pick one. You gotta pick an angle, honey. But thank you so much for sharing your story, answering our questions, being on our podcast. Like, you are absolutely amazing. We're gonna have you back here again, obviously, because we just love your energy. And next time we'll have you kind of giving your take on the topics that we're laying out. So maybe that would be a fun take on it as well.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
Cool. Kendra, any final thoughts to Wendy?
Well, I actually have a question. It's a more serious question. We might have to restart over.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
So I have a question. It's a more serious question. So I know you said on your blog, you talk about, you know, your experience and of like fatophobia and other things. Have you ever had fatophobia yourself, or like any like self-hate that you had to overcome? If so, like any specifics, or if not any specifics, like how did you overcome it? Like what is something that you've done to overcome, or, you know, unlearn or reprogram yourself to think differently?
Of course. So so when a fat person has fat phobia, we call it internalized fat phobia, right? And so I've definitely had my experiences with internalized fat phobia, because growing up, like obviously my parents were like, you have to lose weight, like, you know, you have to lose weight for your 15s, you have to lose weight for this and this and this, like special events. So like once I started becoming an adult, I would be like, oh no, I can't go to New York, I have to lose 20 pounds, like I can't go on that cruise. No, I can't go because like, look at how I look right now. Or I have a deadline. Like there's no way that I'm going to look like this by the time that New Year's Eve gets here. So I used to have that mentality a lot, where like I would stop myself from wearing outfits, from going on vacations, from doing so many things, because I felt like I wasn't worthy of doing all these things. I didn't want to have photos or have memories and like this body that like I didn't feel like was mine for a long time. And it took a lot of like reprogramming. But now obviously like I'm a lot more comfortable in my skin, and I don't like buying clothes that doesn't fit me. I used to do that a lot before, where I would buy clothes and be like, all right, this is the bikini that I'm going to wear. It's a size medium, and I'm going to wear this on the cruise in 2 months, and I have to fit in it. I don't do that anymore. And I'm kind of like, if it doesn't fit me, it's going to donation. Like, that's it. So that's definitely like the reprogramming that I did. Like I only buy clothes that fits. And as soon as it doesn't fit anymore and I'm uncomfortable wearing it, I'm like, I'm done. I let it go. And it really helps me with like unlearning that whole process of like, you need to look a certain way in order to be worthy of certain ththings.
Definitely. Yes, girl. You've overcome so much, and you're still overcoming so much. And there's still so many more conversations to have. And I'm glad that we're able to like incorporate you within this podcast. And you'll, like I said, you'll always be like a guest and things like that. So yeah, you guys are the best. Y'all are the best. You guys are amazing. This is such a good podcast. You guys are so good. Okay.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Next time I'll talk to you guys about Gloria, my ghost, next time.
Yeah, the pleasure is
she
all
needs to be
ours.
paying bills.
Gloria, yeah, no, we're gonna do
Ghosts
like a
don't
ghost
live for
story
free.
thing. We're gonna do like a whole ghost story thing. I feel like doing like a ghost story time video. I was like contemplating it, so I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. But you want to show us like your studio really quick? Like
yeah, so this is like the backdrop. I have some lights over here.
Yes.
This is like where I do like my little hauls, and then this is like my setup. This is my super ghetto fabulous podcast situation going on right here.
Good. Video first. Everyone say hi.
Hi.
Extra, I'm so extra. Read about it or get read, bitch. Can't you read? VIP.
Who's this one?
No entry. ABCD list.
Kendra wiped off his camera yesterday for like the first time ever, and I swear to God, it's done such an HD difference on his whole feature. Like I'm just like, girl, I can see your eyes, honey. I can see the hair. Yes, girl. I forgot what my train of thought was. Oh my God, Kendra and I do this all of the time.
No, you said that you tend to not engage.
All right, recording in progress. Kendra, you're on.
So yeah, like it's a everyday process.
Wait. Let's wait for a second. Just wait for me to stop talking and then just go.
Run it back, check it, run it back. Hey.
I don't know. Okay, yeah, so it's like an everyday process.
You are the best, you guys.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
Of course, and I love you, and I have to say I'm stealing a phrase from you. I think you said stupid, crazy, happy, positive. earlier.
Yes.
I really love it.